let's do some practice problems dealing with absolute and relative change. So we're given a chart here of Terre Haute and their fair market rental rates and absolute and relative change on 5-year chunks. You can see that there's nothing to do here for 2000 because we would need previous information. And since we don't have it, we just can't find the absolute and relative change there. So, okay, for 2005, we would start with new minus old divided by old. All right, because if you're talking about 2005 being new, the previous one would be old. So first, the absolute change is just the numerator, which would be 89. Then I divide by 433 and I end up with 20.6%. Okay, now let's go to 2010. And now 2010 is new, so that means 2005 is old. So 610 minus 522 divided by 522. Again, okay, the numerator is going to give us the absolute change, which is 88. In the denominator, when we put the whole thing together, we get 16.9%. And you might be thinking, wow, 89 and 88 are very close, but 20.6 and 16.9 are not. Well, that's true. Look at your denominators. You're dividing by very different numbers. And remember that your relative change is based off of that denominator. Okay, for 2015, new, old. So 678 minus 610, and then we're going to divide by 610. So first I have my numerator, which gives me 68. When I divide by 610, I get 11.1%. So over what time period did Terre Haute have the greatest increase? Greatest increase, we're looking at the highest positive number, and that would be 2000 to 2005. Because in that 5-year span, it went up 20.6%. But you do need to have both years, 2000 to 2005, because that's the time period over which it grew. Okay, we're skipping number 2 for the video. We're going to go to number 3. What was the estimated change in the population of the state of Indiana in 2012? And then is this an absolute or relative change? Now, when you look at this, this tells you the population change. So when you look at 2012, this bar represents the change. So if you go straight across, it's approximately 20,000. And if you notice, that's a number. And if it's a number, that makes it an absolute change. Because absolute change is numbers. So we had a 20,000 absolute change in 2012. Now, if the population in 2011 was 6,516,922, what was the population in 2012? Well, recall that we just said there was a 20,000, and it was positive, so there was an increase. So from 2011, if I add 20,000, 6,536,922, this is approximately 2012. So, yeah, there you go. And let's write a meaningful sentence represent the relative change. Now, relative change for 2012 will be 2012 minus 2011 divided by 2011. And we are given that information. So, we've got 6536922. It's what we estimated for 2012. Minus the 65,169,22 divided by 65,169,22. Now, it should work out that my numerator is 20,000 because we knew that change, 65,169,22. So when I divide, I get 0.3%. So my meaningful sentence is that from 2011 to 2012, there was a 0.3% increase in population in Indiana. Now, recall the example of Cain and Albert. Albert retired with over $117,000 in his account, while Cain retired with a little over $73,000. Let's compare Albert to Cain. Albert to Cain. This means Cain is new and Albert is old, using relative change. So, Cain is 73,272.55 minus Albert 117,901.25 divided by Albert because he's the older, the reference. And we end up with negative 37.9%. So, because we're going to Cain, that means Cain had 37.9% less than Albert when they were finished. Cain had that much less because that's who we're going to. Okay, so Cain had 37.9% less than Albert. Great. Now let's go the other way. Let's go Cain to Albert. And you might say that's no different. Oh, yes, it is. Because now Albert is new and Cain is old. So when I do new minus old, I go Albert, since he's new, minus Cain, who is old, divided by old. And when I do that, I get 60.9%. Notice it's positive. So now we would say Albert has 60.9% more than Cain at the end of their information. Time, whatever they were doing. And the last section of things here, let's talk about absolute and relative change of percentages. So we're talking about adults who smoke in 10-year increments, and we're going to find the absolute and relative change. So we're going to start with 1990, because we don't have the previous year, so 1980 tells us nothing. So in 1990, we have new and old. So 25.5 minus 33.2, and to find the relative, I would divide. So first, I just take the numerator, and my absolute change is negative 0.7. So it decreased by 7.7 percentage points. And then when I divide by 33.2, I get negative 23.2%. And let's go to 2000. Let's change color. 2000. So now 2000 is new, 1990 is old. So 22.8 minus 25.5 divided by 25.5. So first, the numerator gives me negative 2.7. Then when I divide by 25.5, I have negative 10.6%. And last but not least, 2010, oops, forgot my zero. So now 2010 is new and 2000 becomes old. So 19.3 minus 22.8 divided by 22.8. So just the numerator will give me negative 3.5 percentage points. And then I divide the whole thing by 22.8 and I get negative 15.4%. So you can see every year it goes down, and that's a good thing, right? So number 8, use the relative change over 10 years calculated for 2010, which we found to be negative 15.4% in a meaningful sentence. So there was a 15.4% decrease. I say decrease because this is negative, in adults who smoke from 2000 to 2010. Got to give your time period. Who are we talking about here? And now, what is the relative change in the percent of adult smokers between 1970 and 2010? You know what? That should probably say 1980 because we don't have information from 1970. So in 1980 it was 33.2 and in 2010 it was 19.3. So I would go new and old. So new minus old divided by old. And that gives me negative 13.9 over 33.2 for a negative 41.9%. So from 1980 to 2010, the percent of adults who smokers decreased by almost 42%. And that's great, right? We want less people to smoke because it's bad for you. We want you to live longer, keep alive. Is our answer from number 9 the same value as the sum in the table? Well, the table gave us negative 23.2, negative 10.6, negative 15.4. If I sum that up, oops, why did I carry a 1? Does anybody know? I certainly don't. It's a negative 49.2%. But when I calculated from 80, that I got negative 41.9. These are not the same. Because if you think about, each one of these was calculated with a different denominator. And this just had one denominator. So you can't really compare them. It's like comparing apples to oranges. It just doesn't work. You've got totally different data sets here. These are all individual, and you can't put them together and expect it to be the same information because relative change is based off of the value of the reference or the old value.